All right. Hello, A pushers. Let me get this set up here a second. Okay, now we can read it. So if you're watching this video, you're trying to learn how to move from a 2 or a 3 to a 4. And a 4 is going to be not only a solid response, but it's likely going to get you very good credit on the AP exam. So what I've done is put 4 characteristics. So when I look at the rubric, which you have a copy of it in front of you, look at parts C and D. We're going to be focused on the left side of those two. So 1 point for having some facts that are described well, and another point for framing the response with a skill. It's basically what we're looking at. And this is assuming that context and thesis is there. So here are 4 thoughts. One is that you are connecting this to your thesis. So you've had a stated thesis, your body paragraphs just simply flow through the thesis. The reasoning skill is visible. So if it's a change essay and you are using change, you're going to use that word periodically or synonyms of that word of change, alteration, augmented, something. And you use that word not just to drop it into the essay, but to actually try and prove your thesis. When you think about content, think about 4 to 6 pieces of content that you know well and you can use. And what I put on here, and take a minute to read that, is a reader who recently said to me, as we were talking about an essay, they said that. They said, look, it doesn't always require traditional definitions. How a student connects the evidence is pretty evident when you read it. So hopefully you'll see that with the example I've given today. And then just varying up your sentences. Not every sentence is written for the same purpose, and that should be evident when you write. Okay, so we're going to move through those 4 in a little more depth now. So what does it mean? So to tightly connect a thesis, it means that you have 2 or 3 categories in your thesis, and that's really the start of your topic sentence. That's the structure. So when a reader says, hey, are they framing this with a skill from their thesis? That's really what they're getting at. So all you do is select one of your categories from your thesis and write a sentence about it. Not much more than that. You're just framing that paragraph. And at some point, you're going to return to it in the paragraph. At some point, you'll come back to that category. The skill itself, you are allowed to use any skill. Continuity, changes, similarities, differences, causes, consequences. Those are the skills we work with. It should really be evident. And even if you're asked a change question, you could use continuities if you wanted, or you could just simply stay with changes. But that skill is visible. And again, as I just mentioned, readers are asked, can you identify a skill that the student has used? So therefore, you should be overt in your language. When you are using changes, have that be evident. Even if it's a comparison question, you're still trying to show change over time. So when you think about organizing your paragraphs for this essay, similar to 6 degrees of separation, how can you show change over time? You think about the use of chronology. For part 3, when you think about content, leverage your content. Use the examples that you're having to prove your thesis. Don't just name drop. Those last 2 bullets are the most common mistakes. Students name drop too much without fully explaining, or it's not directly relevant, or they just trivialize concepts. And you're trying to write in a detached, analytical fashion. And then varying the sentence length. So what this is going to do is, we've talked about this a few times, when students write papers and it's just one event after another, and then. You're focusing the reader to interact with your argument and how you choose to set the paper up. And what I put on here is, if I read an essay and the student has varied the length of sentences, the purposes of the sentences, what it's demonstrating to me is the student knew not only the content, but they knew the question, and they knew how to organize themselves. And if you did all these things, that's just a characteristic of a solid paper. What we're going to do is, I've given you a 4, and you're going to take 4 highlighter colors, and you're going to try and locate these. Where do they connect the thesis? Where is the skill? How did they use the content? And is there any variation in sentences?